And it's the top of the hour, so I am going to say welcome to When Words Collide 2022. This is the panel, Cast a Spell, the Power of Poetry. And I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the peoples of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot First Nation tribes of Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations tribes of Chiniki, Bearspaw and Wesley, and the Tsutena First Nation. The city of Calgary is also homeland to the historic Northwest Métis and to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Thank you for joining us. And we've got an incredible cast of people here with extraordinary information about casting a spell and the power of poetry. So starting with Nancy on the top left, we're going to do a mini bio of each of us. And if you have a work in progress, please feel free to share. And Nancy, would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I write under Nancy M. Bell just because my name's pretty common and I want people to find me and not someone else. I've been writing my whole life, writing poetry, writing really, really bad short stories when I was very young. I now have actually my 19th, I think it is, novel will be published in November of this year. It's called Kayla's Cowboy. It's a contemporary romance set in Longview, Alberta. It's part of my Longview romance series. And I have two self-published books of poetry, Through This Door and Touchstone. As well, I was really honored to be included in a collection called Tamaracks, which was curated by James Deal in, I think he's in the Ontario somewhere. And I was really thrilled to have my poetry, Touchstone, was reviewed by Miguel Angel Olive Iglesias of the Hogwan University in Cuba. So that's me.
Great. That's impressive. Swati.
I'm humbled.
Hi, I'm Swati Chavda. I'm a poet, artist, speculative fiction author, fiction and nonfiction editor, and former neurosurgeon. I have published 2 books of poetry so far through my indie publishing house, Ancient Hound Books. The first one was called Love at the Speed of Light, which was it was my teenage poetry, which I edited and illustrated. And I published them in 2019. And one of those poems, At the Edge of Space and Time, won the Aurora Award next year. Thereafter, I published another collection called Footprints on the Sands of Time. That's mostly deals with nostalgia, senses of grief, loss, that kind of stuff. And currently I'm working on publishing a collection called An Eye for an Eye, which is a set of philosophical poetry, probably come out in sometime in October. I'm glad to be here with all the wonderful poets.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Well, it just gets better and better. We have Wakefield Brewster, and he is, I believe, the Calgary Laureate poet. How did you get to be here?
You asked me to, and thank you so very much by invitation. And how did I get to here as a poet, as a professional poet and spoken word artist? I don't mean to sound informal. I'll just list off a few things that I do, a few hats I wear. I am also a professional poetic interpreter, 3-time Calgary Poetry Slam champ and team captain. I'm the poet laureate for 2022 to 2024. I am the resident speaker at the Grand Theatre. I am one of the inaugural artists to be a TD Artist Incubator at Arts Commons. I'm a member of the Canadian League of Poets. I sit on the board of Elephant Artist Relief. And I'm a registered massage therapist and owner of my own clinic, Wakefield Wellness Registered Massage Therapy and Healing Space.
Wow. That's incredible. And thank you for joining us. And Sandy, what long journey brought you to us today? the
Well,
poetry?
a lot of miles and kilometers, but I first started writing fanfic, as it were, back when I was a kid, and eventually started writing my own things. I started writing some poetry because I'd been researching my heritage as a Celtic person, and really enjoyed the style of the Celtic poetry. Um, and also, looking at what religious traditions were back then. And that's been an ongoing thing through some of my work, is what magical tradition do my characters have, especially when I'm writing fantasy. Um, I was nominated for an Aurora Award back a few years ago for uh, the poem Shadows in the Mist, which, despite being Celtic in form, was actually a horror poem. I don't generally write horror. I have 5 different novels and 3 series out, published, including a bunch of um, some of my poems, of short stories. More coming out in September. A fantastical story is appearing in Polar Borealis's next issue, Ardal and the Forest King.
Ooh.
Did not go hunting white stag near Samhain. Uh, it's
That,
it can be very unpretty when people do that. And
terrific.
yeah, here I
Wow.
is.
We've got a great cast here. So I'm just going to sort of lay the groundwork, as it were. So as we may or may not be aware, poetry is magical, and writing a poem really is like casting a spell. So just like spells are charged by the intention of the caster or the author, the force of belief and focus are the foundation of the energy. So it's really what you put out that comes back. And I'm gonna have to tell you, when I discovered Wakefield, you were a true discovery for me. I saw your one poem, and I'm gonna ask you to perform it, and you'll understand, everyone, when I say perform, because he doesn't do but anything but perform, and he is a master at it. So I'm just gonna say, does poetry transform us, or do we transform poetry? Is it an interactive event? And when I saw H2O with Wakefield performing it, it struck me like through entire, it like made my whole body echo because of the strength of it and the power of it. And water for me is something that is a big thing in my life. So it's difficult to demonstrate where a poem ends and where it begins and where it becomes a spell. But when you hear this poem, and this is, we're going to kick off with this one, tapping into the divine is exactly what we're doing when we're doing this. And sharing this through poetry is transformative. And I'm going to ask Wakefield now to go ahead and transform us with H2O.
There once was a time when we flowed like rhyme. Ebbs and tides flowed on our insides. We took no free rides. We just rode waves and dug sacred graves because we knew the earth saves. And when we dropped to our knees to drink at our seas, shores, eventually we ended up creating seesaws. As we gazed into the depths and only saw the surface, the face of folly to come. We drank our own reflections with gluttonous vanity, gulped down gallons with thirsty profanity, draining drops like 3-pointers pollute and then shoot into the earth a dirty needle. The sewers beneath are the burning veins of acid rains. Sludge and sickness pumped through pipes. Walkerton walked in medical plights. It blacked out some lights, then led to court fights. And while the poor fight for it, the rich want to whore it. We'll make you pay. We'll make you pay. The flow of H2O, we gonna keep on the stay locked up. They ain't gonna die, for their supply be stocked up. So damn your creation of the Canal Suez and neglectful flex on the Exxon Valdez, because oil and water, they just don't mix. But slicks and puddles gives kids' heads tricks. They think that it looks pretty. You see all the colors? Now they can finally touch a rainbow and make it dance like a beautiful woman. But once again, the image of life is washed away. Back to murky and muddy waters, our oceans sing the blues. Environmental channels hype to bring the bad news that we're all gonna lose, and I'm getting too confused because I used to drink my water from a bottle. I heard the vehicle of pollution was choking on the throttle. Then a rumor went about I could just not believe. I spelled Evian backwards and found I was naive. My gut is on the grieve. Believe you me, I'm enough pain, G. I first thought that I contracted ileitis or colitis, but from the water cooler, I drank gastroenteritis. You see how Mother Nature spite us? She did it, she done it, and she'll do it once again. She'll fool us into thinking we can cheat our fated end, for we put the pain in her rain and then showered her with disrespect. And we gon' thirst worse unless we get our shit in check, because when the oceans all evaporate, we can't make juice from concentrate. No fluid moving up and down in the locks. No creamy whipped potatoes from a cardboard box. We are damned and doomed ourselves a drunken, dry demise in the stretching of the skin and the bulging of the eyes, because nobody tries. We'd rather drink lies. We hold fast to mistakes of the past, latch to the ludicrous and not liquid life, because we can't let go. Forget what you know. We've forgotten how to flow like water. Thank you.
So thank you so much. It's all in the delivery, Wakefield, and you deliver like no one else.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you.
So I'm gonna ask Nancy, you haven't heard this poem before. Can you tell me, how do you feel about this and the concept that poetry is spell casting? How does it, when you hear something like this, how do you feel?
It's actually interesting because when I was listening to it, I actually wrote a poem a number of years ago that is very, very close to the same theme. It was called Patience, and basically it's talking about how patient the world is with us when we abuse her. And it was almost like hearing Wakefield echoing my own thoughts. And poetry is casting a spell. I remember we talked about it yesterday about whether we write the poetry or whether it comes through us. And I had to look it up because I couldn't remember where I'd done it. But a long time ago, I wrote this really short poem called Ghostwriter. And it says, I am an empty vessel. The poetry flows through me from a more ancient hand. And that's how it feels often. It's just kind of handed to you in a little bucket. And I go, here's a gift, and put it out in the world so that it speaks to other people. Poetry, I think, like spells, it's in the intent behind it. It doesn't have to be brilliant, witty words. It just has to be from your heart, and it has to be true. And the same is true of spells, obviously. What you put into the spell is what goes out, and what comes back to you often is what you put out there.
Sandy? Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I love the Ghostwriter poem, and I love the automatic, the concept that we're really just channels, you know, and that we're flowing and we're back to the water again.
I want Wakefield's channel.
Yeah. Well, we're tapping the source now, so enjoy. Sandra, what's your take on all this?
It's it's the history of us and water, all in one little wonderfully emotional and just very descriptive. Yeah, this is what we've done. This is what Mother Nature is going to eventually do to us um, if we don't pay attention. So as a spell, the only thing it lacks, and that's not, you know, Wakefield. It's awesome as it is, but trying to turn it into a spell, you're not asking for something to happen, and that's in a spell you're asking for something to happen or to not happen. So that's where it doesn't really work as a spell for me. As a poem, as history, as everything else, it's awesome, but you're not asking. So
I see a new poem coming already. It's
yeah,
growing inside of him like a
yeah,
seed in the middle of his heart, just pumping away. Okay, I
that's
agree with you. I agree with you. And I think we've given Wakefield some food for thought, literally.
we want to hear the next one.
Yeah, we're signing you up for next year. You're still going to be poet laureate. You're reassigned for next year. Okay.
Book your weekend now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it'll be one weekend ahead. Anyways, Swati, what's your take after hearing this poem and how it relates to spell casting? What's your feedback?
See, for me, spell casting is its rhythm is something which is a part of spell casting. And you look at the waves of the brain. Actually, you can change the waves of the brain based on the rhythm, like, you know, music and poetry, anything with rhythm or cadence. It actually touches a part of a brain called thalamus, which is at the center of brain. And that is where the pulses to the rest of the brain, to the cortex and all go. And as he was performing, you know, it's his work is not just poetry, it's performance as well. And so it's a combination of poetry and music. And that is exactly what goes to the thalamus. It changes the waves. And to me, as a scientist, that is a way of, it is a kind of a spell. Secondly, I always themes which involve the elements always resonate with me. And this was water, which is I associate water with creativity. It's a source of nourishment. Earth is the only planet where, as we know, we have life. I mean, there may be elsewhere, but we don't know it yet. And water, without water, it's nothing. Like even in the ancient times, cities were established on the riverside. There were ports, trading ports on the seas. Water runs through every part of human civilization and human experience. And how we treat water is our way to give back, or even to continue that interaction, or the overall intraplanetary metabolism of sorts. And it was very interesting for me to see that whole interplay within that poem. I really enjoyed it.
That is just, it's so right on the mark. And you know, all of you, I have to say that you've touched me in my heart and my soul, because every one of you has a completely different perspective, but also completely valid. And you brought up something, Swati, that I have to say is really important for all of us, and that is the idea of cadence and rhythm, and the power of that in how it works in terms of spell casting and poetry. And one of the reasons I had asked Wakefield to join us is because his rhythm is part of his spell casting, is part of his poetry, is part of his performance. And he is, I think, perfect as poet laureate for Calgary. But it's also instructional to all of us. Each person attending, each person as a panelist, in terms of this is something that we can all learn from. And, you know, I think, Nancy, there was a poem that you had read, and you had some repetition in it, and that was another thing. Can you guys, Nancy, starting with your poem, which if you don't mind reading again, I think you know the one I'm talking about. Repetition is another part of the spell casting, and also I'm going to mention that rhyming is part of the cadence and the delivery. So as much as I am a free form poet, baby poet, I am inspired to seek meter in my work, because of the power of delivery and the power of rhyme and the power of repetition. So Nancy, I'm gonna give this to you now, and then I think Swati and Sandy, you're going to be next up to read a poem and comment. Thank you. Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, first off, quit calling yourself the baby poet, girl. You're a poet.
Okay, Mom. Thank you.
So this is called Beltane Morn at Avery. It's the original title was The Singing Stones. And if there is actually something I don't normally do in a poem, just because I do a lot of free verse, but if you listen, the last words of every line in the first stanza mirror the last words in the third stanza, the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth stanza, and so on and so on. And the ones in the second mirror the ones in the fourth, and so on. So you don't necessarily pick that up on, it's easier to see it on paper for sure than when you're listening to someone. So can you hear them, the singing stones? Memories of their ancient glories rising in the mists of dawning, this Beltane morn at Avebury. Their song of ancient glory sung, the future trembles in their tones. Stones of the earth, sweetly singing, this Beltane morn at Avebury. The mist, it shimmers between the stones, shifts and moves amongst the glories. Dragon paths, the flame air dawning, this Beltane morn at Avebury. In ancient times, the rites were sung, the earth, her bones returned the tones. Bright sun ignites the power of singing, this Beltane morn at Avebury. The serpent mates within the stones, sacred light ablaze with glories. The blessed fire in the dawning, this Beltane morn at Avebury. From head and tail the chants are sung, dark welcomes light with ringing tones. Old with new their voices singing, this Beltane morn at Avebury. From Silbury they see the stones, torches flare, reflects the glories. Pens burns brightly in the dawning, this Beltane morn at Avebury. All voices one, the songs are sung, promises made in sacred tones. Granite rings with holy singing, this Beltane morn at Avebury. Down countless years the silvery stones guard the paths of ancient glories, blessings on a new age dawning, this Beltane morn at Avebury. The ancient knowledge will be sung, quartzite notes in granite tones, rising hopeful with the singing, this Beltane morn at Avebury. The ancients set the standing stones, so their children can the glories, sons and daughters, new world dawning, this Beltane morn at Avebury. Spirits rise in living stones, their wondrous music joins my tones. Old ones walk with me in dawning, this Avebury Beltane morning. That's the
Oh,
one.
I love it.
That was the right one, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I thought that was the one you wanted.
And Swati, do you have a poem for us?
I do actually. I wrote one just 3 or 4 days ago specifically for Cast a Spell panel. So one of the things I feel that any kind of magic requires is attention. Without attention, there can be no magic, or anything, not just magic, anything that is higher or anything which is numinous. You need attention for that. The spell requires, as you talked about, intention, but even before intention comes attention. And that is one thing we in our modern life are always in short supply of. We live in a very distracted world. Many times, even while on panel, I check my message to see if somebody has said something important, whether I'm missing any emails. We are always multitasking, and we are just jumping from thing to thing. Our attention is not sustained. Very rarely we are present. And I feel that for a poet, exercising our muscles of being present or paying attention, it really makes a difference. And that is one of the ingredients. And the poem I wrote was kind of about that, just, it was just about paying attention. It's called, again, I just wrote 3 or 4 days back, so it's very raw. So please bear with me as always.
Always.
It's called The Dawn Priestess. Before daybreak, the last stars burn, clear in the stillness of dawn. Her magic's forbidden fountain, hidden from sleepers, cynics, or angry minds. Tiptoeing with tender sunrise, she protects silent sources to tap, like fog lying low over an autumn creek, or the scent of mist at dawn, a faint blush in the eastern sky over craggy high Himalayan peaks. Fresh, clean alert, drifting with morning breeze, the river daughter enters, hair dripping with dew. She hums an ageless song, chanting with precision the syllables of mantras, her ancient Rigvedic rituals, her hymn to Usha, the goddess of dawn.
Wow. I love it. I love it. It's putting you right there.
It's, I think, like for me, when I was working in my previous profession, it was mornings are always about rushing, and you just have to. You wake up with the alarm clock, with your stress level spiking, and then you just hurry to get ready, get the hell out of the house, and do stuff, and get to work and all. And there was not a single moment of paying attention. And now that I have created time, I actually make sure I pay attention to the things, the magic of the morning, basically. And I think this was kind of about that.
It's always about the magic, always. I was going to mention something. I was researching a long time ago, and probably going to resume researching again for a novel. And yes, there's water involved. How could there not be? But another thing that came up with the rhythm and the drumming is also the idea that the words are part of it, but the other part of it is actually moving to the music. And maybe it's because I've found an interest in the shamanic, but everything is about, I think I saw a quote on Facebook, if you're depressed, are you singing? Are you dancing? This is part of who we are. Just a reminder that we all have the spark of divinity and connection to the divine. And so I just wanted to say that, when we're creating our poems, we really are casting a spell. And, and I think it wasn't immediately obvious to me, but, like if you look at a book like White Goddess or there's a couple of them out there, but this whole idea, of repetition and meter and rhythm, it's part of the power, I think. Sandy, you have, I know, mentioned a book to me, and that part of that discovery led you into writing one of your poems. So I was hoping we might hear from you.
It's the Carmina Gadelica, which is a collection, actually Nancy has a copy to hand, of translated poems and spells and whatnot from the Celtic regions. And that's, now, again, you have a problem when you're translating words from one language to another. You kind of lose the immediacy, and you're the pacing is going to be different if it's in a different language. But I write in English, so I'm good. Actually, the read is called The Giant's Dance. And I almost read it yesterday during our readings, especially after hearing Nancy's poem about Avebury. This one's more about Stonehenge. And it was published in Polar Borealis number 13, so people can download that and read it for themselves. The Giants Dance. The giants dance in the moonlight. The giants move in the starlight. Dancing giants becoming stone with the dawn. Power drew them to the plains. Power brought them from deep within the earth, linking circles of magic on the land. Myrddin brought them here. Myrddin, Ceridwen's child of ancient magic, bringing the giants here from their lines of power connecting all the sleeping giants in the world. Lines of power feeding energy to the rights, connecting people wherever they are. Sunrise marked by giants in the distant hills. Sunrise revealed by giants in the depths of winter, marking the festal days of the year. Festivals celebrate the passing of seasons. Festivals honor the living and the dead, celebrating life under the unchanging sky. Tall stones reach for the moon and the sun. Tall stones have fallen, swallowed back into the earth, to each other till the end of time. Man today denies their hidden power. Man then reveled in their knowledge, denying never their connection to the earth. Few mortals walk among them, savoring the past. Few mortals dance beneath them, feeling their power, walking the paths of our ancestors. The giants dance in the moonlight. The giants move in the starlight. Dancing giants becoming stones with the dawn. So.
Wow. So this is the dancing giants are in what country?
Was
Oh,
the one I was
Stonehenge.
thinking of.
Okay, Stonehenge. All right. Sorry, you cut out for a second.
But there are stone circles all over the world. In North America, we've got Karnak, and we also have the medicine wheels in North America from the native peoples. You know, they all are a way to connect us to the power of the earth.
It's true. It's true. I think we have one here in Nose Hill in Calgary, right?
Yeah, there is a medicine wheel up on Nose Hill. They're all over, and a lot of times they're ignored because they're small. You know, it's not big stack of, you know, it's not giant pieces of rock. Although there's actually a stone circle that was built here in Calgary. I think it's down in the southeast. I can't remember exactly where. But they had a big field and weren't going to, it was supposed to be a wild space, and they just, they built, they I guess took sandstone from somewhere, and they just built a little stone circle with, you know, uprights and tops to them.
Are you talking about Tom Campbell's Hill?
It's down in the southwest.
Okay, because Tom
Yeah.
Campbell's Hill has sort of like the circular with the stones and everything.
Is that up by the zoo?
Yeah, by the zoo.
Okay, this is not the one. It's a bigger one, down in the southwest.
Oh, that's wow. Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll follow up with you on that.
Yeah.
Just a reminder to the panelists, if you haven't already put your websites or such like into the chat for our attendees. And Yeah, I was going to mention, the whole cast a spell thing. When I heard Wakefield perform H2O the first time, I was transformed by his depth and everything, connected to the water that he tied in to his poem. And which reminds me, that we are all connected, and that our poetry is like a spell, in the terms of it's like a song, or it's like a prayer, and that the words that we create are transforming to other people. And this is where part of the spell casting comes into poetry, I think. Swati, you had said something about where you come from in India, about some things. I'm not sure if I can recall exactly. You might recall it. Could you tell us about that again?
Yeah, in the Hindu and Buddhist traditions, even in Jainism, I think, there is this tradition of chanting mantras, and the mantras have, it's not just the word, not just the content, but the form also matters, and the way the syllables are arranged and the way they are performed, the cadence and the rhythm, that is supposed to alter the effect they have. Some of the mantras are supposed to be to invoke the sun, and they actually they say that they illuminate a person from within, and both metaphorically as well as literally. And the effect happens only if you say them correctly. Like if somebody just reads them off the page without any rhythm or cadence, the correct one, they are not supposed to have any effect. And that's that kind of a theme is woven into the ancient Hindu scriptures. Even the things like the whole belief in the concept of Om. The very sound Om is supposed to be a primordial sound, which is ever present, everlasting throughout the universe. And when the way you say it, it's not just Om, it's not a single thing, it's Om, it's a three, it's composed of the three beats of the sound. So things like that, it's supposed to be regulated with the breath, and everything you do is regulated by the way your breath goes in, out, and the pauses and everything. And to me, that's a very interesting concept, because even as a medical person, the way you take your breath, it does determine your physical and mental state in many ways. So everything is interconnected.
Wow. The thing with the breath, once again, we're going back to Wakefield because he's the man. When you do your performance poetry, Wakefield, and I have to say this is very important. Your breath and how you control your breath is very much a part of your delivery and the power of your delivery. Can you talk about that, Wakefield?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry about that pause. My mouse was disconnected for a second there. I am not a singer by any means, and I said that already, break glass, scare animals type thing. However, I'm a vocalist, and I work the exact same way as an opera singer, regardless of how grandiose that may sound. I work with lung power, and I also work with very long phrases purposefully. I have distinctly written my poetry, which is free form, but with big stretches, long phrases. Remember, I'm a classically trained pianist and percussionist, so I somehow write musically. There are big phrases, and I realize that unless I practice with breathing for months ahead of time, I can't perform my own stuff. I have to actually get better at breathing to accomplish some of my own performing. It's a great way that I've learned to push myself. But what I hear up here that I write there is not always easy to get out of here. And a lot of it has to do with timing, rhythm, cadence, the swells, the wanes, all of it. but I am very much in control and in tune with my diaphragm to make these things happen. Breathing is just like water in poetry. We only speak on exhales, on exhalation. You really have to time this. So I've spent many years crafting around difficult phrases for long periods of time with very controlled breathing. I've got to set myself apart from every other poet, and that's one of the ways.
And this is why we call you the Wizard of Words.
You're very gracious.
Oh, I'm just a collection of phrases, really. But they keep popping into my head and exhaling, they come out my mouth. I don't know what's going on there. But anyways, so Nancy, when you're writing poetry, do you think about the phrasing, or is it just coming out of you? Is it automatic writing? I know for me, because most of my writing is automatic. Like I don't know, how do you say this? I don't work at it. Like I don't like slave labor over my poetry. It just kind of comes out like for you, like you said, like it's in a bucket, here it is, and you open your hand and it just comes out into the page. Do you have any kind of thing that happens when you're writing like that?
It depends. Usually the first draft just comes. And then if I have to fiddle with it, and sometimes, I fiddle with it, I make things rhyme or I mess with it, and then it always feels wrong. I always end up going back to the original one. I remember yesterday we were talking about, I took the dogs for a walk and I came home with a poem. It was called April Breath, and it was because I was walking, and it was in April, obviously, and there was a plowed field, and it was kind of, everything's melting, and there was actually this mist rising up off of the furrows. So can I read it?
Yes, please.
It's short. It's called April Earth. I saw the earth breathe today. A pale pearl vapor rising from the plowed field. She exhaled as the east wind billowed her flowing breath across the raw mud. Shimmering in the April afternoon sun, her breath shed diamonds as it hung above the snowy prairie. The earth's cold wintry breath mating with the warm spring sun, birthing the moist mist dancing in the strength of the moving air. The raven shadow flashes across the snow as he flies overhead, borne on April's breath. And that, honest to God, I was walking my dogs and came home to write that down, and just the way it is. And it was a gift. It was just a gift, and it's been published in a couple of different places, and it's just I don't know. It's not really a spell. I'm not sure that I totally agree that a spell has to ask for something or for something to happen. Sometimes, for me, not necessarily for everybody, but sometimes it's just I want to bring someone to a place where I am, like to envelop them in that spell of where I am in nature. Usually I write about nature, and I don't usually write I in anything. I did in that one, but usually it's just a capsule of what I've seen or what I feel, and the spell I want to cast is to draw people into that, so they experience that same beauty and wonder, and hopefully feel the energy that I felt at wherever I'm writing about. Sometimes it's healing. Sometimes the spell is healing, which I guess is sort of asking for something, but in a more nebulous sense. That's just me.
Very insightful. And I have to ask now, did I hear mating with the earth?
Yes. What did I say? Hang on. The earth's cold wintry breath mating with the warm spring sun.
Mating with the warm spring sun. I love it. That's
great. Yeah, spring belting
yes.
and night mating, and the seeds in the earth waking up after their long winter sleep.
Totally. Well, your feedback gives rise to the whole idea of intention, and that when okay, let's face it, there's pantsers and there's plotters. Okay, I mean, even in poetry, let's face it.
Yeah.
I know for me, poetry is extremely emotional. thanks to Wakefield, I'm probably going to open up some real pain poems. And also to say that not all of the poetry that we write is going to be about seeking a prayer or seeking assistance, or maybe it's like just sharing the healing or sharing the moment or sharing that vision that you have, you know, or just sharing a seed of yourself, you know, but the transformation of the poetry. And in old days, bards were doing the writing and the playing and the singing, and it's all connected, the music, the words, the performance, it's all connected to the message, right? And the intention behind the message. When we I mean, when an author or poet sits down to create, we don't necessarily have a specific intention. At least for me, it's very much, it's like I open the door and who's there, you know, which for another person, they might put their pen to paper or keyboards or whatever, and there's an intention, and I'm going to say this, you know, but sometimes the message is really, you know, it's in the words, and it needs to be modified, or the big words come out, but the smaller words need changing, or, you know, but the thing is, we are creating, and the poetry that we share does transform not only us, the writers, but also the people who are exposed to the poem and to the poetry. And this is the message, that everything is transformative in poetry, and that it's not just a one-way thing. You're not just on a stage by yourself. You're actually in a two-way stage, because it transforms you, which again transforms you in another entire loop, like a circle. And once again, you're transformed over and over again, right? So it never really stops, and it's a continuous feedback loop. And I think the secret is finding your voice, and then if you have more than one, opening the door to more than one, if that's the case. But we're at the 1:48 timeline, so I'm going to have to say incredible. Everyone has just given so much of themselves here, and I really, really appreciate that you took the time out of your day to come down and talk about the power of poetry and spellcasting and poetry, and how it all relates, and there's so much more. I think we're just going to have to do it again next year.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah, darn, eh? Well, we'll pick this up next year, but this is being recorded, and it will be shared on When Words Collide YouTube channel, which will be put up in due course. No guarantees on the date, but I will say thank you very much for attending, and thanks for coming down. And you know, keep writing, and look for the magic, and don't be afraid, because everything that you create is actually helpful for other people, and even helpful for yourself. And you know, from what I've enjoyed when watching Wakefield, is that there's a lot of doors inside your soul, and every one of them leads to a different place. And don't be afraid to open the door and turn on the light and see the magic and share the magic, because the magic is you, my friend. It's you, and it's inside of you, and you have to open the door to bring it out. So that's my take on this one. And we got to go because we got other panels, but thanks so much for attending, and take care and stay well. Thank you, everyone. Bye.